Welcome to this episode of Wrap Up, the key developments in Ukraine. A lot has happened from the European Union approving another multi-billion-dollar aid package to Kyiv, outlining non-negotiable conditions for any future peace talks. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense sector is setting the stage for the future of warfare even now, driving technological advancements that are reshaping modern combat and striking long into the Russian territory. Today we break it all down, the EU's latest €3.5 billion aid package and what it means for Ukraine's economy, Kyiv's red lines for peace negotiations and why Ukraine refuses to compromise on sovereignty, and Ukraine's cutting-edge defense technologies and how they are transforming the global security landscape. Let's dive in. One of the biggest financial developments this week was the European Union's approval of a new €3.5 billion disbursement to Ukraine. This is part of the broader Ukraine Facility program, a €50 billion aid package designed to keep Ukraine's economy afloat as the war continues. With this new installment, Ukraine has now received nearly €20 billion in support since the initiative launched in early 2024. These funds are a mix of non-refundable grants and low-interest loans aimed at stabilizing the economy, rebuilding infrastructure and supporting critical reforms. But this money isn't just handed over without conditions. To unlock this latest round of funding, Ukraine had to implement 13 key reforms. These include strengthening renewable energy initiatives, ensuring energy sector independence, improving border crossing efficiency to align with EU standards. The EU's continued financial backing sends a message: Europe remains committed to Ukraine's survival, recovery, and long-term integration in the European Union. However, challenges remain. Ukraine still faces budget shortfalls, skyrocketing war expenses, and massive reconstruction needs, all while fending off Russian aggression. The big question now is whether this level of support will continue at the same pace in the years to come. Amid international discussions about potential peace talks, Ukraine has drawn clear lines in the sand regarding any negotiations with Russia. In an interview this week, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that Ukraine has three fundamental conditions for any settlement: territorial integrity and sovereignty. Ukraine will never recognize Russian-occupied territories, including Crimea and Donbass, as part of Russia. Alliance freedom, Ukraine's right to join NATO and the EU, is non-negotiable. No external power, especially Russia, can have a say in Ukraine's geopolitical choices. Military independence, Ukraine will not accept any restrictions on the size, strength or capabilities of its armed forces. These conditions clash with the approach suggested by Donald Trump, who has hinted that Ukraine might need to compromise in order to secure peace. His administration has called Ukraine's goal of restoring its pre-2014 borders unrealistic. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin is pushing for a US-brokered ceasefire, but with conditions that would effectively cripple Ukraine's ability to defend itself, including stopping military mobilization and halting foreign aid shipments. These demands are widely seen as a trap, designed to give Russia time to regroup and prepare for future offensives. With Trump set to speak with Putin on March 18th, the stakes couldn't be higher. European allies and Ukrainian leaders worry that a rushed deal without firm security guarantees could leave Ukraine vulnerable to another invasion. The bottom line: Ukraine refuses to negotiate from a position of weakness. Any peace must be based on justice, accountability, and lasting security, not just temporary ceasefires that allow Russia to rearm. Beyond the battlefield, Ukraine is spearheading a revolution in military technology, turning its fight for survival into a global defense innovation hub. Recent insights from the Brave One Defense Tech Innovations reveal that Ukraine is rapidly transforming the future of warfare through cutting-edge drone warfare, automation, and digital battlefield integration. Drone warfare evolution. Ukraine is scaling up drone production at unprecedented pace. By 2025, it is expected to produce 4.6 million drones, more than double its current planned procurement. These drones are 1. Cost-effective, cheaper alternatives to expensive traditional military hardware, especially cruise missiles. 2. They are high impact, capable of striking strategic Russian targets with precision. 3. Rapidly deployable, adaptable to changing battlefield conditions on the go. And 4. Automation and AI on the battlefield. The future of drone warfare lies in autonomous systems that can operate without direct human control. This shift is crucial because it reduces risks to human operators, counters electronic warfare threats more effectively, speeds up decision-making in high-intensity combat zones, interoperability and digital warfare. Ukraine's military tech sector is also pushing for standardization across its defense systems. Currently, many different weapons, drones, and electronic warfare tools don't communicate seamlessly with each other. By integrating systems into a unified digital warfare network, Ukraine can improve battlefield coordination, enhance real-time decision-making, and strengthen defense cooperation with NATO and other allies. Ukraine has proven that defense technology isn't just about winning wars, it is about preventing them. The innovations being developed now will have long-term implications for European security, reinforcing the NATO allies' capabilities and the West's ability to deter future aggression from any side. However, there are still roadblocks. Many Ukrainian defense startups struggle to expand internationally due to export restrictions and complex regulations. To fully capitalize on its defense tech advancements, Ukraine needs stronger integration into the international security framework, whether through NATO membership or alternative military partnerships. So today we have Anna Danilchuk, aka Anna from Ukraine, in our studio again. I'm really glad to see you. Hi.
Happy to be with you and your viewers.
So, as the diplomatic process is ongoing, we know literally nothing that will happen tomorrow. Even tomorrow we cannot predict that, but we can see what is happening in Tuapse in Russia, for example, and in other places where oil refineries are stationed. They burn. And they burn as announced after the hit by the lone Neptune, a new strike cruise missile of Ukrainian origin that is made exactly to strike deep into land targets. Originally, Neptune was an anti-ship missile, but now I believe it has been modified. You've seen some footage of those strikes, and you know surely more than we do about long-range strikes of the Ukrainian military. What do you think about them?
I would like to know more and more and more. I mean, to see the results of their work on the evil military objects inside the Russian Federation. And, you are so right when you say we are a bit tired of this politics and diplomacy and talks about the negotiations when literally there is no background apart from Trump's decision to get a Nobel Peace Prize. So one of the best things that people can do in such chaotic moment in history is to focus on the things we can do to defeat Russia. And I am more than proud that in this complex context, with lots of people trying to undermine Ukrainian spirit and morale, we react and we become stronger. And one of the best news of this week was actually the successful testing of the long-range Neptune. Most likely it was successfully tested on an oil refinery that kept detonating for 3 days, which is really cool. And, many of people already remember the name of the Neptune missiles because they were the ones that destroyed the famous Russian warship Moskva. 2 of them hit Moskva and upgraded it to a scrap metal on the bottom of the Black Sea. And another very important reminder to all those diplomats, Ukraine actually successfully destroyed Russian Black Sea fleet. So we can do a lot. And it's good that this is a Ukrainian missile developed for the first time back in 2010. But since then, a lot of new things were introduced, and it was changed from a simple anti-ship missile to a missile with a very wide spectrum of tasks. And most importantly, now it can target 1,000 kilometers away from Ukraine, which makes it similar to Taurus or other long-range missiles that we were not allowed to fully use. So for me, the best thing is that we don't need to ask for a permission to neutralize the necessary targets inside the enemy territory.
Yes, and one more crucial enhancement considering Ukrainian-made weapons, I believe, is the non-ability of Western partners to restrict them programmably, with software. Because when this period of cessation of US aid and intelligence sharing, F-16 radars was simply shut off from the Pentagon. They held those buttons. They can turn off any of the weapons that they have provided. That has even started concerns in Canada, in Portugal, whether they should buy the F-35s, the brand new American jet, or they should stick to French Rafale. We see Mr. Macron acting as, this great, bold new Napoleon of Europe, holding back the Russian armada. Yes, and uniting the world around France and its sovereignty.
You are so right, Pablo, and I think this is a huge mistake of this new White House administration to illustrate how they can interfere in the work of the weapons that other countries buy from them. And this is a demonstration of not trustworthiness. And I am sure that even those nations that do not declare it openly have already looked at the list of other potential providers. And this will be bad for American manufacturers because, let's be honest, their military weapon production economy is one of the very important for the country. But this is definitely a demonstration that, at least with the Donald Trump administration in the White House, no one can trust the weapons provided by the United States. So it's not just about the restrictions that were put, it's about these unpredictable things that may happen. And we already know that when Elon Musk shut off Starlink at the start of the invasion, when we had a very successful operation in the Crimea. This is another example. It was not it was just a personal decision or a hidden decision, but you cannot do things like that. So hopefully more and more countries will look for more trustworthy providers. And I have a dream that sometime soon Ukraine will be able to satisfy some of the foreign demands, not just Ukrainian, but with our real war experience. Because another subject that we can actually discuss, many of strong and good NATO countries actually have very little experience of this modern drone war. And we know that we actually produce a lot of things that then destroy Russian oil refineries. So maybe that is a future goal for Ukraine military production.
Yeah, and how do you feel about the idea of maybe creating not a new NATO, but a defense cooperation like confederation inside the Baltics, Ukraine, probably with Poland in that kind of union, maybe Finland and Sweden will join. Because, the closer you to Russia, the more money you put into defense and the more realistic you get because you literally see them over the border and you know what they can do.
Thank you. That is a really good question. And not just see, unfortunately, you feel their
Yeah.
evil, toxic presence. And one more thing, perhaps you've noticed that too. We don't need to explain anything to Poland, Finland, or the Baltics why Russia is a real threat and does not want peace, because they know it from their own history and their own experience. I'm a huge supporter and fan of NATO. And I believe right now, it's not just Ukraine that needs NATO, but also NATO that needs Ukraine. We are in this very turbulent moment, not just for Ukraine, but for NATO too, because it seems like Donald Trump is not very interested in the support of the alliance. And it was very important, a central country inside the alliance. So some turbulent things may happen. And we have to be prepared for that. I would like NATO to survive this war and to stay stronger with Ukraine in it. But sure, other countries, and I think this process is already happening actually. I believe that more and more countries will grow their vision out of this coalition of the willing that right now European leaders and Keir Starmer are trying to develop. And of course, I think. The more strong unions we have between the countries, the better. So that if, for example, NATO becomes a purely European project, or maybe without the United States, I would not like this to happen. But if it happens, we have to be prepared for anything. So potential other options are good.
Yeah, and United States are a major contributor to that NATO alliance. Is kind of their sin since after the World War II. And what we actually seeing right now, I see a lot of edits on Instagram, not just to say that it's a non-valuable source of information, where European Union and European community is colored with Ukraine inside and with Ukrainian flags alongside this whole new inter-Europe idea, the inter-Europa, yeah? Like Europe is strong together as a real federation. And it's really, really pleasant to see that going into the popular culture, because, you know, when something becomes part of the popular culture and culture as the whole, it's no longer only on the table of the politics. And if those politics say that Ukraine can join EU in 2030, I believe that's true. And 2030 is just around the corner. It's 5 years. What is 5 years in terms of reforms and the life of a country?
Yeah, just 5 years ago, it was 2020. It seems yesterday. You're right. And it's so cool that Ukraine and the European Union actually share the colors. So it will be a very nice period when everything starts for us. And I do believe that Ukraine belongs to the European Union. It's not something new. We are not alien to the countries of Europe. We are returning back home where we belong. And I believe it's also important to focus, and I actually feel that most of these important leaders within the European Union have already understood that. Once again, it's not just beneficial for Ukraine. It's not a present of the European Union to the people of Ukraine. It is also good for the European Union because, trust me, in Putin's head, there are a lot of evil plans against the EU. Russia has already interfered in a number of problems, like actually caused a number of problems inside the EU, starting with elections and finishing with the immigration crisis.
And the
And having
fires in
Ukraine
Lithuania,
as a
explosion on the
strong
planes.
guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things, and unfortunately, many will happen. This interference into internet cables, and many more things that maybe right now we do not connect to this Russian footprint, but in reality it is. So, having Ukraine as a member, as a guard, unfortunately, we cannot change the location, and Russia will continue to be our neighbor. But with strong Ukraine, right now we have the strongest army in Europe. We have the most experienced army in Europe, and Putin is openly afraid of that. That is why he pushes for this demilitarization of Ukraine, which I'm sure no one will ever accept. But we have this real force that can change a lot and that can protect a lot. So hopefully, many will finally see it not as a present for Ukraine, but as a present for the European Union too.
Yeah, and Ukraine being a present, joining the EU and NATO is kind of a Russian talk point from the propaganda side because, some people in Europe may be still not informed why the war is happening and why Russia is actually an aggressor, and why it is bad that they are waging war against another sovereign country. So, and lately we have seen the shutdown of Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, which were the enemy voices inside the Soviet Union. They helped to crumble that Soviet empire. Right now, we see that it will be reformed. I hope that it will be reformed because, as the Russians say, not everything is so straightforward. It's their favorite saying, just to, divert attention and make people not inquire in politics. So the politics is the way of the politicians, and we will concentrate on the price of a croissant, maybe, or the price of wheat, because Ukraine will sell a lot of wheat into the Union after joining.
Yes, there's news about the offices of the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe shut down. Perhaps was something really bad. Like I've got used to this bad news coming from across the ocean, but this one was really bad because for me, Radio Free Europe is a symbol of strength, resilience, and it was one of the greatest enemies of these evil regimes of China, of Russia. And it's not just a source. I've been to the office of Radio Free Europe in Prague, and I know how many dissidents who escaped the Soviet Union, for example, or the Milosevic regime found a shelter and a possibility to speak the truth of their nations. And it was the dream of Moscow for decades during the Cold War that this media can be closed. And it is such a negligence, such lack of knowledge about these institutions, and they need to be saved. And even now, I'm collecting some materials for my work, and whenever I wanted a real source, I would always find it on Radio Free Europe. They have perfect analysis. They work with crimes against humanity. They have trustworthy statistics. No one else had that kind of information in different languages. And they are destroying it unthinkably. And the consequences will be really bad. So I do hope that countries, the European Union, will find a way to save Voice of America and to save, of course, Radio Free Europe.
As Europeans have not fully recognized the threat and the dire consequences of Russian invasion until Trump administration, I believe right now Americans and Europeans will cherish even more the work of Radio Liberty. It was really cherished in the Cold War times, but for the last few years I've been feeling like they were just continuing their soaring good work, but you just continue work. What can you change for really? And right now, when they will be absent, they will really cherish those media for what they are doing and for what they can do.
I agree with you completely. And I think if the things continue to develop that quickly and that negatively in the United States, they will need Radio Free Europe to speak the truth. Because, many countries, once I've read a comment that I would love, I think you will like it too. Just like stop naming our countries post-Soviet or ex-Soviet because you never say like post-Nazi or ex-Nazi states. And I think, but I mean, all those unlucky countries that were once imprisoned within the Soviet Union, we know well what life under Moscow dictatorship was. We can imagine that, if not personally, then from the stories of our parents and grandparents. And many nations were lucky enough to never taste it. And they think, oh, it's not big deal. They have closed that station. Now they threaten to close this one. Now there is a question that the president didn't like, and he does not allow the media company to enter press conferences. Not a big deal. This is a big deal. This is a big deal, and you are in real danger. So we can share some of Ukrainian experience or other countries, because Unfortunately, we do have to fight and protect democracy. It seems to me maybe it was Reagan who said that we are always one generation away from the collapse of our democracies. And that is exactly what we witness right now. But I'm happy that in this context, we see serious protests in Serbia, in Hungary, and that is a threat to Putin voices in some European countries.
Yeah, and the Radio Free Europe is in Prague, its central office. So what holds back the European Union from concluding a grant agreement with the broadcasting station after the grant agreement has been denounced with the United States government? And I believe we will see some kind of a reboot of this international broadcasting system, as well as UATV's international broadcasting system of Ukraine.
I hope so. I hope so. Maybe one thing that is quite complicated is how quickly it all happens. I've read a number of journalists saying we knew it was coming, but we thought it will take like 6 months or a year. But you see, this new administration has a tremendous speed, which is not okay. Once again, even if you want to stop the dying and push for negotiations, these are very serious topics and they demand some thinking, some conversation, some projecting. But no, they have this very high speed, so that maybe people don't notice the amount of mistakes they make during this run. But I just think maybe Europe will need a couple of some time, but it is definitely worth saving and having both as a symbol, but most importantly, as a resource of very high quality information and topics that many other media do not want to rise or don't know how to rise.
Yes, and while Radio Liberty is rebooting, we will try to do our best with you, Anna, to convey the truth of the free world directly from Ukraine to our viewers, because we share a lot of viewers with Radio Liberty and Radio Free Europe in English language too. Thank you for being with us today. It's always a great pleasure to see you in our studio, although now virtually, because, we are building a new one right now. And I hope that really, really soon we will meet in person there.
That is another proof of our resilience, and I'm sure we will have good time in that new studio of yours.
Okay, thank you again for coming to our studio, for UATV, giving this interview, and have a nice evening. You always encourage us to do more and to do it positively better. Thank you.
Thank you, it's an honor.
This week's developments highlight a critical moment in Ukraine's fight for sovereignty and security. The stakes have never been higher. Billions in EU aid are flowing in, helping Ukraine keep its economy afloat. Kyiv is drawing clear, uncompromising lines for peace deals, territorial integrity, alliance freedom, military independence. Ukraine's defense technology sector is setting new standards for modern warfare, reshaping global security in the process, and this all happens at the same time. As the war grinds on, Ukraine is not just defending itself, it's shaping the future. The world is watching, and the choices made in the coming weeks will determine the course of our history. That's it for today. Stay informed, stay engaged, and as always, don't let propaganda win.